Human beings have long-term ambitions to travel across the stars, colonizing other planets and unlocking the mysteries of the universe. But how can we start our journey across space, or perhaps even time, when we have yet to fully understand or comprehend the mysteries of our own planet? Perhaps the best place to look to begin unraveling the mysteries of the cosmos is our own oceans, around 95% of which remain unexplored. From mysterious underwater alien life forms to undersea geology, to the Mariana Trench, to the Bermuda Triangle, otherwise known as the Devil's Triangle. Often cited as a place where many ships and airplanes go to disappear and never be recovered, but additionally a loosely defined location on our planet where facts also seem to go to disappear. Frequently mentioned as a place of mystical energy and unscientific crank theories, this area of the Atlantic, vaguely agreed to be taking up more than 500,000 square miles, seems to be an anomaly right here on planet Earth, which human beings have yet to explain sufficiently. Perhaps the depths of our own oceans, in a way, represents the depths of human imagination. People want to believe in the paranormal, and this area of water is a nexus of wild speculation that goes extraterrestrial. If the mystery of this patch of ocean can simply be explained away as nautical lore, where is the evidence that supports any one scientifically backed conclusion? Can the strange accounts of lights and navigational problems within the triangle be explained away as mere magnetics, or something completely natural? Can science eventually help us explain how numerous craft, both sea and air, have vanished without a trace and continue to disappear all the way up through modern times? Is the Devil's Triangle a mystery, or are the stories related to this wide area of sea merely spooky myths that have been embellished to suit our lust to keep the unknown from being anything other than the unknown? Although perhaps embellished, the first set of bizarre recorded incidents in the Bermuda Triangle were observations made by Christopher Columbus on his journey across the Atlantic. Noting how strange the Sargasso Sea was, Columbus was originally under the impression that he was close to land because of brown alga known as sargassum, which floated on the top of the ocean. This macroalgae is generally found near shallow water, and Columbus feared he would become shipwrecked. It was in this general region that Columbus recorded seeing a great flame or fire from the sky one night, which crashed into the ocean, and a strange light in the distance that appeared many weeks later. While the initial incident could probably be explained away as an asteroid sighting, how would one explain the strange lights later in the month? Columbus also noted that his compass readings were erratic within this area, perhaps an anomaly caused by magnetics, the triangle being an area of the world where true north and magnetic north perfectly align. Hundreds of years later, starting near the year 1800, this patch of ocean would be a common place where seafaring ships would simply vanish, in some cases without a trace. At least 4 ships, the USS Insurgent, the USS Pickering, the USS Wasp, and the USS Wildcat, all disappeared within a 25-year span, with a combined crew of over 250 people. It is crucial to note that many of these disappearances probably coincided with powerful storms in the Atlantic. One of these storms occurred on September 20th, 1800, and has been tied to both the losses of the Insurgent and the Pickering. Further, the locations of these losses are not entirely certain, some of them possibly taking place a little bit outside of what is territorially known as the Bermuda Triangle, but nonetheless pinned to the growing list of abnormal occurrences in the watery region. One of the most remarkable and feasibly unbelievable tales of the Bermuda Triangle was that of the Rosalie, supposedly found abandoned on the ocean in the year 1840. Conceivably one of the more haunting accounts attributed to the Triangle. This was a merchant ship which was discovered with its goods still intact: wines, fruits, bolts of cloth, and silks, and extraordinarily little damage had been done to its sails or hull. However, the crew apparently completely abandoned the ship, with all hands seemingly lost at sea. The captain's papers, found secured in their proper place, revealed absolutely no log entries that would indicate any problems at sea. The only living things found aboard were a cat, some fowl, and a few starving canaries. Yet another scary story from the Triangle comes in the form of the Ellen Austin, a ship considered by many to have encountered a cursed vessel. Although there are conflicting accounts of this incident, it has been recorded that around the end of the 19th century, the crew of the Ellen Austin discovered another ship and were perplexed by its aimless sailing pattern. With no signs of life aboard the ship, but still suspicious of pirate activity, the crew of the Ellen Austin observed the apparent ghost ship for a full 2 days before finally making an attempt to board the derelict vessel. Similar to the Rosalie, no crew or passengers were found. However, personal belongings and food rations remained intact, as well as a supply of valuable mahogany. When a squall separated the two vessels, legend has it that the crew of the Ellen Austin made yet another attempt to catch up to the derelict vessel to obtain its goods, only to be separated by yet another storm, perhaps losing several of its own hands in the process on both attempts. In the morning, after being separated a second time, the Ellen Austin only saw clear blue sky and clear blue sea. The derelict ship had disappeared, as if it never existed in the first place. While some accounts of ghost ships in the Triangle are unclear at best, and only the subject of tall tales, never fully substantiated or fully backed up by any conclusive documents or written accounts, seacraft continued to seemingly evaporate in the region. Let's fast forward a few decades to the 20th century. The earliest loss by sea in the century being the USS Cyclops, a Proteus-class collier that appears to have lost every one of its over 300-strong crew in 1918 under mysterious circumstances, and never to be recovered. While many reasonable researchers have speculated that the Cyclops was either the victim of a storm or sunk by the German Navy, no evidence in the form of wreckage materialized to prove or disprove anything. This vanishing at sea can be contrasted with the disappearance of the USS Proteus and the USS Nereus, both sister ships of the Cyclops, in late 1941. It is interesting to note that all these three ships were the same Proteus-class build, having similar, if not the same exact design specifications as one another. Perhaps this class of ship simply were not built for the ravaging conditions of the Triangle. There was another factor at play, these losses all conspicuously taking place around the times of the First and Second World Wars. Other incidents at sea include the loss of the USS Cotopaxi in 1925, the wreckage of which was just recently discovered near St. Augustine, Florida in 2020. Accounts of even more losses at sea over a 3-decade span from the late 1950s to the 1980s include the Revenant, the Sulphur Queen, and the HMCS St. Laurent, all coinciding with extreme weather events at sea having to do with extreme winds and hurricanes. One modern example of losses at sea in this region include the disappearance of Perry Cohen and Austin Stefanos in 2015, two 14-year-old boys who went missing following an ill-fated fishing trip, which saw the boys drift directly into a massive storm, only for their 14-foot ship to be found floating off the coast of Bermuda a year later. Incidents by air, although slightly more limited in occurrence, are nonetheless common enough to contribute to the overall mystery of the area. Perhaps most disturbing of the aerial incidents was the disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945, which was a group of 5 aircraft. 14 crew mysteriously vanished after the squadron leader reported a critical failure of navigational equipment. An additional 13 men were lost without a trace in a search crew that were sent to investigate in a Mariner craft. With no wreckage and no bodies found, this incident added to the mystique of the Devil's Triangle. This incident was followed by several craft through the mid to late 20th century being lost under similar circumstances, with sometimes as many as 3 aircraft lost per decade, but averaging at least 2 per decade through the end of the 20th century. While wreckage of many of these aircraft have been recovered, as well as leaving a handful of survivors to tell the tale of navigational issues, reports of mechanical failures, and electrical problems, all of these accounts only serve to build the ambiguity of the Bermuda Triangle. Many of these incidents can be easily traced to fog, bizarre or sudden extreme weather, or pilot error as their cause. However, the unexplained loss of hundreds or likely thousands of people cannot simply be dismissed as any one naturally occurring phenomenon. Thus, the folktales of the Bermuda Triangle grew even larger, and became even harder to both refute and substantiate. The human capacity for imagination is great, and people will often reach for the most implausible conclusion, despite an empirical lack of evidence that validates any one explanation. At least a portion of the genuine enjoyment of unexplained anomalies like the ones experienced in the Devil's Triangle is directly derived from the speculation surrounding the issue. While there are a wide range of theories, no one theory has been postulated that can explain away every single disappearance. Conspiracy theories are often either accepted or rejected as an extreme view, but what makes them so convincing and entertaining, to some, is that many of these theories have a kernel of truth embedded at the center for ease of digestion. Although highly implausible, the most widely accepted theories about the triangle are still within the realm of possibility in some cases. Some of these theories go as far as attributing wormholes or black holes right here on planet Earth to the disappearance of crew or even full air and sea craft. When Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 went missing in 2014, there was a contingent that attributed it, without evidence, to supernatural forces, suggesting that the flight was subsumed by a literal tear in the fabric of time-space. This theory has also been attributed to the Bermuda Triangle, with some suggesting that wormholes are the cause, which for now are a purely theoretical bridge linking one point to another point in the space-time continuum. This does sound more like science fiction than science. However, it has been shown time and time again that pilots and sea captains have had difficulty with navigational factors in the region, perhaps pointing to an abnormality of magnetic or gravitational forces at work. Is it at least possible, although highly improbable, that there would be some kind of vortex inside the triangle producing inconsistent but strong enough magnetic variations to actually produce a time warp? While this would explain the missing craft and missing people, it would also be the first discovery of its kind, if true, and again, there is simply no modern scientific evidence to back up this theory, for now. Over the last few decades, alien interaction or interference is also an entertaining, but far-fetched go-to for the modern speculator. Even Columbus claims to have witnessed a fiery object crashing into the ocean in the 1400s, which can seemingly be further bolstered by sparse, unsubstantiated accounts from tourists and others who have traveled through this region. It is interesting to note, however, that modern explorers have also bought into this theory in one way or another, and very recent eyewitness accounts of wingless craft have been recorded as hovering over the eastern Florida coast. Could it at least be possible that aliens from outer space have used the triangle as a point of capture or abduction, capsizing craft in only some instances and taking hundreds of people with them, either into outer space or to inner space? There are even those that speculate that extraterrestrials have used this spot of ocean as a refueling depot, hovering over the Atlantic Ocean and using simple H2O as a source of fuel for their intergalactic travels. Or even that the mythical Atlantis, otherwise known as the Lost Continent, is still, to this day, a popular but sunken hub spot for alien travelers, and that the land itself was once the victim of the immense and superficially mystical powers of this spot of sea. However, critical thinking does reveal these ideas and accounts are loosely connected at best, with no further evidence supporting any of it. If these extraterrestrial or interdimensional notions hold any truth, that truth has yet to be fully revealed. Other theories range from witchcraft to the area being subject to some form of actual black or harmful magic, of which, again, there is simply no evidence to go on to officially confirm. If it is aliens or a wormhole, why the inconsistencies in the tales of the patterns of the disappearances? If these imaginary forces are somehow a mainstream stay here on planet Earth, why do far more visitors make it out of the triangle alive and well, as opposed to not? Other hypotheses suggest water spouts, that is, extremely powerful sudden tornadoes on the ocean, which can create waves and winds that could spell disaster for pilots and passengers. Then, there is also the implausible but still quite possible notion of methane blasts, otherwise known as a flatulent ocean, whereby gigantic bubbles of gas and mud from the undersea burst on the surface, potentially wreaking havoc on all kinds of crafts with blowouts, or as The Guardian so eloquently put it in a 2016 article, an attack of the killer sea farts. Many of these theories hold no more water, no pun intended, than me suggesting that a gigantic underwater sea creature, or creatures, are responsible for the strange incidences. And while all of these theories are fascinating and highly enjoyable, none of them are highly plausible. So now, let's take a look at science over science fiction. Putting superstition aside for a moment, we must acknowledge the fact that the ocean in general has always been a dangerous place for human beings to be for a variety of reasons. In a modern sense, the Bermuda Triangle isn't even one of the most statistically dangerous places on the ocean, with shipping incidents mostly occurring in the South China Sea, the North Sea, and the British Isles. And there's nothing mystical or otherworldly about it. The vast majority of modern incidents at sea are simply the result of poor maintenance, extreme weather, and human error. All parts of the Earth's oceans, just like all the parts of every major continent, present unique dangers. The Atlantic Ocean, in a classical sense, has always been associated with numerous dangers going back hundreds, even thousands of years in recorded history. The Bermuda Triangle is also part of Hurricane Alley, where storms generally accelerate before making landfall. Unlike other sections of ocean, the Triangle is partially susceptible to sudden changes, which may eventually at least partially explain away many of the strange occurrences at sea. Naturally occurring trends, like hexagonal cloud formations, may also be creating another uncommon, but scientifically verified phenomenon called air bombs, which loosely defined are blasts of downdraft air which can create sudden sea surface winds, reaching hundreds of miles per hour and causing massive unexpected waves, as many as 45 feet high. Although some disagree that this alone could convincingly clarify the mysteries attributed to the Triangle, perhaps this, in combination with other naturally occurring events like electromagnetic forces, may lead to a satisfying but underwhelming conclusion. Even beyond our own planet, there exists what is believed to be the Bermuda Triangle of outer space, stretching from Zimbabwe to Chile, where the Van Allen radiation belt comes closest to the Earth's surface. The Earth's magnetic field is particularly weak in this area of space, where solar radiation creates an abnormally increased fluidity of energetic particles, essentially producing a radiation hotspot. This naturally occurring outcome can cause similar equipment damage and navigational failures. Fluctuation in Earth's magnetic field aren't just common, they're normal, and the human understanding of cosmic magnetics is far from complete. Combined with all too common human errors, the Atlantic Ocean is subject to powerful surface currents, known commonly as the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream carries significant warm water poleward, and mysterious disappearances in the region may also be compounded by deep ocean currents, alternatively known as thermohaline circulation. It would be easy for a capsized ship to sink and get carried away in a series of underwater tidal waves, which may explain how some ships can simply disappear without a trace. The Triangle is still, to this day, one of the most heavily trafficked oceanic regions in the world. Modern pilots and ship captains do not attempt to avoid it for any other reason than severe weather conditions. While science cannot currently conclusively explain away the mythos from the region, it can also help us to eventually get a realistic grasp on what makes this zone such a harsh and unforgiving one in the annals of history. Probably the single most interesting aspect of the Devil's Triangle is how we, that is, you and I, project our own beliefs and perception onto it. Maybe that's why supposedly haunted houses, historical battle sites, and even areas of nothing more than water hold such a permanent sense of dread and fascination, where in reality they are probably just areas of dangerous but naturally occurring phenomenon. Maybe the reason why, despite all reason and lack of scientific evidence, people continue to believe in ghost stories and extraterrestrials, and turn to folklore and fantasy as a source of extreme entertainment. Science, after all, tends to bear out facts that are mundane and lacking the thrill and wonderment that we were hoping for. As long as your beliefs remain harmless, I can certainly understand the appeal of extending as far as the human mind will stretch, to the stars or to the ocean's floor, particularly to honor the eternal life of the dead. We all need one form of escapism or another to depart from what is a very dreary and imagineless story. Perhaps the aliens and phantoms that we want so hard to believe in are merely the aliens and phantoms that exist at the furthest possible reaches of our own very active imaginations. Full-grown adults, just like children, can also have very healthy fantasy lives. The trick is to temper that fantasy with actuality, to pull those with their heads in the clouds back to at least get 1 foot back on the ground. Whether it's imaginary extraterrestrials, imaginary apparitions, or purely imaginary triangles at sea, these ideas represent the furthest possible point that our minds can manifest, and maybe there's an outside chance that these ideas contain the tiniest morsel of truth. I think that one day we will know the truth about the Devil's Triangle, but just like a full exploration of the ocean floor, or the exploration of our entire galaxy, that is a distant certainty. And maybe it is that certainty, the truth, that either extends beyond or beneath our collective imagination.